welcome to the Midnight Debrief, Carl, episode 2.
Woo! Where we are.
We made it through some vigorous technical difficulties, but we made it. So here we are.
Indeed.
Awesome. How you been?
I've been great. I feel good. I'm glad that we got this stuff working after a lot of hours of painstaking trial and error.
Yeah. Well, as always, we're always going to focus on interesting topics. We're going to talk about maybe what's on the news, maybe some conspiracies, what's going on pop culture news. Last week, we talked about a paranormal investigation that you went on, and I think that was really interesting. You shared some deep insights, and we went kind of through the video that you did. So it was a great production, and part of that conversation that we had, we were talking about horror movies that we grew up with, ones that we're familiar with, and of course that have, tested the, stayed true to the test of the time, you
Right.
know. One of them being the Omen. So we're going to talk about a few things today, but some stories don't end when the credit rolls, and that's kind of what we were talking about last week. Some don't stay where they're told, and some, don't let go. And tonight we're going to go a little bit deeper. So it's not just about strange coincidences. This is really about patterns, repetition, events that start to feel intentional. This is episode 2, Cursed. So The Omen, let's really sit with this one. The Omen, 1976, directed by Richard Donner, starring Gregory Peck, Lee Remick, and Harvey Stephens as Davian. Really a film about the Antichrist being raised in secret. Now, from the beginning, people involved felt pretty uneasy about it, especially with Gregory Peck, reportedly hesitated before taking that role. What are your kind of thoughts on The Omen as a movie that could possibly curse? What do you know about it?
The Omen is a phenomenal movie because there's been so many really weird occurrences that happened on and off set. You want to go into some of those instances?
Yeah, so we brought out Gregory Peck, and he's just one of the many actors and people behind the camera, too, that have had some incidences. So there was a few things that happened, in particular, where he actually gets on a flight to London. Midair, lightning strikes the plane. Not unheard of. Planes are built to withstand that sort of thing. They're built tough. But then the strange part is producer Mace Newfield experienced the same thing. Separate flight, separate time, lightning strike.
Wow.
And then the screenwriter, too, David Seltzer, again, same thing. At this point, you can kind of explain it because, it's statistically rare, but plausible to a degree. So, the producer wasn't done, and it gets worse, actually. So during the filming, a hotel crew, if you will, so the crew, the cast was staying somewhere, and part of the hotel housing crew members were actually bombed by the IRA.
Right.
So different target, same building, wrong place, wrong time, that sort of thing.
That's crazy.
There's a few more, but I remember seeing this movie, I want to say, 13, 14, 15, somewhere. And that's really where I started to get into a deep dive of horror movies. I started out with Friday the 13th being my favorite, followed by The Exorcist, and then I started going into movies like The Omen, Poltergeist, that sort of thing. Do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
I do. I remember actually watching it with my dad, and my mom came out and she's like, "What the hell are you guys watching? Turn off this garbage."
Yeah. I had to sneak it. So my dad would go to sleep early. My mom was working, and I would sneak downstairs. This was the day of the huge TVs that would sit on the floor. They had the cabinet. In most homes, once that TV broke, you would just put another one on top of it. So it was that type of situation. but it was during the HBO era, and so I would sneak down and I would catch some late night horror movies, and that's where I fell in love with it initially. But as I mentioned, Omen came across my eyesight, my lexicon of horror films when I was a teenager, and I gotta say, even for being at that time almost 30 years old or so, it still held up, and I think that movie, along with Exorcist, are the two for me that stand the test of time, really. So, but so they had the IRA bombing. They had the two separate plane incidences, and then there was an animal trainer on here as well, George Spenton. So he was actually attacked and killed by a tiger. No warning, no clear trigger, just the most disturbing story. So these are all connected to the movie. So one of the most iconic deaths in horror history was that part where someone's decapitated. I think it was like a piece of glass or something that cut someone's head off. The man responsible for that scene, John Richardson, months later, he was in a car accident in the Netherlands. His assistant was with him. Liz Moore was her name. Okay. She's killed, decapitated after filming.
That's brutal.
Wow. Not to make light of the situation at all, but it's hard to say that there's necessarily definitively an evil attached to a film or to an artifact, and we'll kind of dive into that as we move forward. But there's another one where reportedly there was a street sign from this accident where there was the decapitation, and it read Omen with two M's, OMMEN, 66.6 kilometers. So I don't think that's been proven, but I don't think it's been disproven either. It's one of those urban legends that is attached to a film that already has so many tragedies attached to it. It's hard to fathom. So, if you don't believe anything supernatural, that's the kind of detail that sticks with you.
I remember watching the special features of the Omen, and what was it? It's Richard Donner was the director, right?
That's right.
Yeah, Richard was talking about how when the people at Fox and the publicity department got their hands a hold of all this information, they're like, oh, well, it's the Omen. And that was a great marketing material for them, right?
I mean, the movie itself sells itself just by everything outside the screen. If you were telling me that there was a movie, no real detail about it, just a horror movie, but you tell me all of this stuff happened outside the movie, behind the scenes, I'm going to go see, just out of pure curiosity, what's going on in this film and what's tied to it, making all these occurrences happen. So, step back, we got multiple lightning strikes, a bombing, a fatal animal attack, a death mirroring a scene right out of the movie. So at what point do you stop calling it a coincidence? You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. No kidding. Well, it's been said that the devil didn't want the film to be made, right?
Right. And I think there's been other movies, and again, we'll kind of break this down, where that thought has been attached to the movie, where there's some evil demon or something just not right that's attached to this. It's almost life imitating art, right? So you have a movie about not necessarily devil worship, but the Antichrist, and you're pretty much taking liberties at that point with the universe. Whatever your belief is, you're putting it out there, and it's almost an invitation for something, demonic or evil to come in. So I think at the end of the day, you really got to look at some of the evidence and say, this is more than just a coincidence.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's really chilling and disturbing to hear about all these stories about these actual occurrences that have happened. And it's like you said, it's not just one, two, or three. I mean, we're talking about how many is Kevin?
We're looking at a good half baker's dozen at this point, and there's probably a few more maybe that we haven't touched upon. Some of our listeners going to let us know, but
Right.
as far as I know, this is one of the most prolific or magnifying type events that's happened in a movie, and there's a few more. And I think one that you wanted to touch on, which was really interesting to me because I only knew of a couple things about this movie, but The Wizard of Oz.
Right. Yeah, The Wizard of Oz, but going back in time now, when I was a kid, it was my all-time favorite movie when I was growing up. I mean, I've watched it so many times that I think we wore out the VHS tape. I had to buy another one. I love that movie, and I even had the collectible figures, all of them and whatnot. And it was made in 1938, and it opened August 17th, 1939, when America was at the cusp of World War II. So World War II was happening. The Wizard of Oz was this, it was a hopeful outcome of that dark energy because the witch is dead and Dorothy gets to come back to Kansas, right? But then you start looking at all these mishaps that happened on set. For instance, the Tin Man, right? Who was originally cast as Buddy Ebsen. The makeup they used had ground up aluminum in it, right? So he started getting cramps in his fingers and his hands and feet, and it spread to his arms and legs, and he couldn't breathe. So he'd been inhaling these aluminum shards, and eventually I put him in the hospital. So those aluminum particles had been like floating around. He inhaled them. It put him in the hospital with pneumonia. He was in an oxygen tent that ended his time with the film short, and it literally scarred his lungs.
Wow.
And then from there, he had a tendency to get bronchitis for the rest of his life. So,
Did he pass from lung cancer or anything possibly related to that? I mean, I know he wasn't exposed to it for years, but there's enough exposure you'd think there was something that would complicate his health from it.
well, I'll leave that to our listeners to comment on because I'm not exactly sure how Buddy Ebsen passed away. But there's other instances I'd like to talk about here. So Margaret Hamilton, who played the Wicked Witch, got severely burned on set. Did you know about this?
I think I heard something, but I don't know the details.
Well, she was only on the film for a whole 12 minutes. But
Okay, I would have thought way longer. It seems like she's in it sporadically, but longer than 12 minutes.
Yeah, she was only in it for 12 minutes, but her presence really dominated the whole film. So Margaret Hamilton got severely burned, and it was in the scene where she appears in the Munchkin Village. And when you first see her, that's her stunt double. But when she actually disappears onto the stage, they actually use Margaret Hamilton for that because the director, he wanted to get it all in one shot. And it was a pretty complicated shot. So she had to hit her mark exactly right. And then they had the fire effect. It went on too quickly, actually. And her hat and broom caught on fire, causing third-degree burns on her hands and second-degree burns on her face.
Wow.
So the makeup they used, it gets even worse. So the makeup they used was copper-based, and it had to be removed with rubbing alcohol, and they had to press down hard on these fresh burns to remove the makeup to clean her pores completely.
So it made it 10 times worse.
Exactly. And they said that Margaret Hamilton said she would never, ever forget the pain that she felt in that moment.
No.
So there's more. Betty Danko, Margaret Hamilton's stunt double, right? She agreed to do the scene where she's flying on a broom. Well, the smoke mechanism on the back of the broom exploded, and it caused these metal shards to get stuck in her leg, and she was hospitalized. Of course, there's more. It keeps on going. So the most disturbing thing of all is apparently there was a munchkin that hung himself from one of the lighting grids.
Yeah, I remember trying to find that one particular scene. You'd hear about it. Everyone would be like, oh, it's definitely in there. And your friends, you'd go try to watch it. But I don't remember vividly seeing it. It's always like, oh, there it is. You got to pause it at the right moment.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It wasn't in the version of the film that you would see today.
Okay.
You have to go hunt down this particular collector's VHS edition to actually see it.
Okay.
So
it's out there somewhere.
Right. It's out there. You just have to get that rare VHS copy. But you can actually see it in that VHS copy of this body swinging back and forth. It's pretty disturbing. And it was so far off into the distance at first when they originally released the film that it was only these true film buffs that had watched the film so many times that finally noticed it. And then there was other editions of the film that actually replaced the Munchkin with an alternate shot of a bird from the LA Zoo. So if you go back and watch it now, you're going to see this bird off in the distance. You're not going to see the actual hanging.
So it's true to an extent about the urban legend, because you would hear, there was a Munchkin that hung himself, and then other people would talk about the bird. But I think that was the misinterpretation, or someone would say, oh, no, that's just a bird. That wasn't actually this person. But in reality, it was that person that hung themselves, but they, edited it to put the bird in that shot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is back in the day when safety standards on the set just basically didn't exist,
Yeah.
And aside from that, according to certain reports, the Munchkins were kind of a rowdy bunch, and they tended to drink and party.
I heard they had short tempers.
Right. Whether that was entirely true, I know there has been interviews with the Munchkins, and they've disputed the fact that there were any drunken orgies and rowdy parties and swinging from chandeliers and everything else. And a lot of those stories were debunked by them. But, who's to say what actually really happened?
Right. I think Judy Garland came out and said some pretty eye-opening, surprising things. She was harassed. She was, to a degree, bullied. There was a lot that went on behind the scenes. We didn't know about till, 10, 20, 30 years ago, I guess. But there was a lot to it. And you would think that this magical movie that we all really grew up on, no matter how old you are, I don't want to say sinister, but there was, certainly some negative, ominous things going on there.
Right. Yeah, there were. And, I mean, it's crazy to think that, right, you're like, this is such a childhood gem. And now we know about all these things that happen. It's like, do you really, kind of think differently about the film? I mean, it was one of the last films that my mom watched with us as a family, and she loved that film so much. She would always talk about it, and then she loved how much that I loved it when I was a child. So I think even despite knowing the things that maybe MGM let, go under the rug or just let happen or was careless, it for me, it hasn't changed my perspective of a classic that it is.
So from one movie to another, and for me, this was a childhood quote unquote classic. Tape trading, go over to your friend's house to watch this because your parents wouldn't let you watch it, was Poltergeist. So I brought that up last week, but this is one of those films that really stuck with me. Even till this day, I can remember so many iconic scenes from it. Seeing Reverend Cain, seeing the skeletons come out of the pool, obviously see Carol Ann sitting in front of the TV and those ghostly hands, the apparition comes out. So this movie's a little different. It doesn't just have incidences. It has a pattern of loss, sort of like the Omen, but a little different. So the original Poltergeist, because they made a really shitty remake that maybe only a few people saw. The original came out in 1982. It was a huge success. Steven Spielberg was part of that movie. But behind the scenes, behind the success, there was a lot that was going on. This sort of dark entity or dark vibe, if you will, was following the cast. And I think a lot of people are familiar with Heather O'Rourke, who passed away. She played Carol Ann. I think that's probably the more of the well-known incidences right behind the did they really use skeletons, human skeletons, as part of that scene where we see, the bomb in the mud where the pool was going to be. So,
right.
But there is something else. There was Dominique Dunn. She's a young rising actress. She plays Dana. So she's the older sister. But in real life, she becomes involved in an abusive relationship with John Thomas Sweeney. In October 1982, he strangles her. So her boyfriend strangles her. She falls into a coma. 5 days later, she passes. She was 22 years old.
That's crazy.
I brought up Reverend Cain. So if you remember what this guy looked like, I mean, you would think they used a lot of special effects and makeup to think of Skeletor from the Masters of the Universe movie when Frank Langella put the Skeletor mask on. It was very bony, and that's really the type of figure and complexion that Reverend Cain had. It was like sunken cheeks. You could see the bones, and it was super creepy, but that's actually what he looked like, because at the time of filming, he had stomach cancer. So he was actually going through it, and he knew it was his time. Julian Beck was the actor's name, but really unsettling performance overall. I think he passed away just shortly after. It was like weeks after, and he unfortunately passed away. There's also Will Sampson, who you may remember him for One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. So if you've seen that movie, so he was the one at the end.
Classic, by the way.
Yeah. Puts the pillow over Jack Nicholson, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So he reportedly performed a real spiritual cleansing on the set of Poltergeist because of the growing fear among cast and crew that all of these things were happening. Not long after, he died from complications of surgery. So you have, of course, Reverend Cain, you have Will Sampson, you have Dana. They're all gone, and the most famous one is young Heather O'Rourke,
which I think is the most tragic of all of them. What a young, talented, brilliant actress she was, and for her life to be taken so abruptly. And to tell us more about the medical misdiagnosis, if you will, too.
Exactly, yeah. So she believed it. They believed she had Crohn's disease, which I'm familiar with family members having that. She had a congenital intestinal issue. It went unnoticed until it was really too late. In 1988, she collapsed. She died of cardiac arrest, all because of this misdiagnosis. And she was only 12 years old. Only 12.
Yeah, that's tragic.
Yeah. It's tragic, and it goes on. And we'll talk about arguably one of the biggest urban legends, or, something where did they actually use real human skeletons in the shot? And the answer is yes, they did. And there's been people on record, part of the film, that said, well, it wasn't uncommon for human skeletons to be used in films back then. Do you know about that, or have you heard that?
Yeah, I did hear that, and I had no idea that apparently, yeah, using like real human skeletons was a thing.
Yeah. Well, the reason is because it was cheaper. So go figure. They're just digging up bodies and saying, let's just throw this one in the shot, and they don't have to pay them. So,
Right. Jeez.
But you have to ask something uncomfortable. You're making a film about spirits and restless energy, about something really being trapped between two worlds, and you're bringing actual human remains on the set. Even if you don't believe in curses, you can understand why people sort of started feeling a certain way,
Right.
like someone was watching or waiting. It's pretty weird. But
Yeah.
so we'll move away from movies for a second, because we could really go on and on about this if we can talk all day about it. So talking about haunted locations, and one thing that I didn't know about, and I'm from the Northeast, I never heard about the Jersey Devil.
Right.
So you actually brought this up. You said, hey, this might be interesting to talk about. So
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the Pine Barrens in New Jersey covers over a million acres. Did you know that? A million acres? It's almost a quarter of the entire state. And this, I want to say, a mythical creature, because it's been seen dating back all the way to the 1700s. It's basically a bipedal kangaroo-like body with hooves, a long neck, an elongated head like a horse, crowned with a set of horns or antlers, a whip-like tail, and massive bat-like wings and two glowing red eyes. So the origin story of the Jersey Devil, right? So it goes back to the early 1700s. A woman named Jane Leeds of Estaville, New Jersey, was a mother of 12 children. And when she discovered she was pregnant with a 13th child, supposedly she cried out in despair that this yet-to-be-born child would be a devil. So on the night of 1735, Mother Leeds was in labor on a stormy night, and when she gave birth, the child appeared to be normal, healthy infant, but almost immediately it transformed into this demonic-like creature and attacked the people in the room, and then it flew up through the chimney out into the Pine Barrens. So it's not only I mean, it sounds like a crazy story, right?
Right.
I mean, you can't really believe it. Who knows what actually happened? But according to legend, that's where the Jersey Devil came from. But what I found really interesting is there's a prominent historical figure named Commodore Stephen Decatur encountered the Jersey Devil while testing cannonballs at a foundry near the Pine Barrens. He reportedly fired a cannonball directly at this thing while it was flying, and it passed through with no effect. Before colonization of New Jersey, the Lenape Indians actually referred to that area as what we now call the Pine Barrens, as the place of the dragon. So it goes back to these Native Americans before we even got there, so they've been talking about it, warning us of it, and now it's a mascot
of their state, their hockey team.
Right, exactly.
So it's funny, because I feel like this carries more possibility than Bigfoot, than the Loch Ness Monster. This feels like more than just a couple sightings and hearsay and old wives' tales, whatever. This sounds like it actually has some legs to it, literally, figuratively.
I agree. And you can't ignore the thousands of eyewitness sightings of this thing. I mean, people are seeing something. Now, what exactly it is, we don't really know. But there was an interesting a video I saw online of a exorcist talking about how this is a demonic creature, and it would make sense if it was a demon because this thing has never been captured really on camera before and definitively identified as, okay, this creature is the Jersey Devil. Here you go. Well, a demon would have the power to manifest and then disappear at will.
Sure. You wonder why it chose New Jersey, though, right? You know, there's a lot of other places it could have gone to. I just feel like there's better decisions, right? In Ghostbusters 2, you know, Vigo could have chosen the San Fernando Valley. Instead, he chose New York City, and Peter Venkman questioned him on that. So,
right,
yeah, there's something in the water there in Jersey and New York, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, Kevin, do you want to also talk about our next cursed location?
Yeah, and then so from one place of degeneracy, I don't know if that's a word, but it is now, to another, and that's Nevada, Las Vegas specifically, the Nevada Triangle. So you know about the Bermuda Triangle and all the planes that have gone down, ships have gone missing. There's folklore about that. You can go on and on about it. And there's another one, the Nevada Triangle, which is surprisingly lesser known, but actually is more deadly. And when I was doing research on this, some of the numbers blew me away. I was like, this doesn't make sense. There's no way that these many planes go missing and no one knows about this. Part of the reason why is because it's so close to Area 51, or at least that's part of the belief as to why. So it's actually a region spanning from Las Vegas, Reno, and Fresno, remote, harsh, but beautiful. If you've ever driven through like areas like the Mojave Desert from Vegas out to LA, it goes on and on and on and on. And so this terrain is very similar, obviously, and it's dangerous. So apparently, since the mid-20th century, over 2,000 aircraft incidents have been recorded there, some explainable, others not so much. Steve Fawcett is an experienced pilot. He's wealthy, by all means, calculated from all accounts. In 2007, he takes off, routine flight, good conditions, he vanishes. No distress call, no signal, search teams comb the area, nothing. For over a year, they looked. Couldn't find anything. Then wreckage is found just out of nowhere, but no clear cause. So generally, pilots who fly through this region describe strange sensations. So sudden drops in altitude, instrument failure. One can make the argument you're flying through a mountainous region. Obviously, you're going to have some pretty, bumpy, a bumpy road, basically. You're going to have a lot of turbulence and instrument failure to a degree, but moments where everything is just lost and stops making sense, that's a little different. And that's what some people describe this like. So, again, blame the mountain waves, powerful air currents, whatever. But just to go down unexpectedly, especially where newer aircraft, where they have some of those features that, autopilot, of course, but there's ways to be able to either fly around that system or at least anticipate it so you're not affected by it. Planes are made to withstand this type of turbulence. So you even have pilots that are military trained. So again, Area 51 isn't too far. There's advanced aircraft there. You can make the argument there's alien cover-ups and conspiracies. There's electrical interference everywhere you go there. My question was, and I brought this up to you, more hypothetically, why is that an open airspace? If you've lost 2,000 aircraft, why isn't someone saying something about this? So maybe some of our listeners know more about this. Maybe it's common knowledge. I had heard of it, but I didn't know much about it until really doing some research. So those explanations really don't cover everything. I mean, these are happening in clear, stable conditions. So no storms, no warnings, just disappearance. So is it environmental? Is it mechanical? Is there something about that region? What do you think?
That's a great question. To be honest with you, it reminds me of, well, obviously the Bermuda Triangle. We don't know why the hell planes and ships are disappearing there, but who really knows, to be honest? And I don't know. I mean, whether it's something paranormal and aliens are involved. I mean, could that be?
I mean, aliens is the hot topic right now, and of course, we just saw the Artemis 2 come back from their moon mission, which is incredible. But prior to that, we have former, government officials saying the things that I know, if I told you, would completely blow your mind. You wouldn't be able to handle it. These are people that work closely within the, FBI, CIA, those type of agencies that know more than we do, of course, that know something we don't. I don't know if I'd go as far as to say, yeah, Area 51 is involved in these interferences or these disappearances, but 2000, like, come on, this is crazy.
Yeah, that's mind-boggling. I mean, and why haven't we really heard about this Nevada Triangle? And when we started researching this episode and trying to find cursed locations, I remember we both saw this. We're like, whoa, no one ever talks about it, right?
Yeah. And again, why is it an open airspace? I don't know if we can go back and do some more research on it. We didn't want to spend hours and hours, of course, on one topic, but maybe some research clears that up rather, and says, though 2000 is an inflated number. I don't know. Or, well, actually, there's certain times you can fly there. There's certain times you can't fly there. Is it restricted? So there may be more to it than meets the eye, but, that's something, if our listeners know more about it than us, certainly let us know.
So, Kevin, I'd like to move on to cursed objects, in particular the Annabelle doll, which most people know from the Conjuring films. Well, the real Annabelle doll is nothing like we would see in the Conjuring films. It's actually a Raggedy Ann doll that looks nothing like the Annabelle that you know. And Ed and Lorraine Warren, the two infamous paranormal investigators, deemed Annabelle to be demonically haunted. And they had actually the doll locked up in their occult museum in Connecticut. And despite warnings from several people never to move her, as of late 2025, the real Annabelle doll has left the Warrens Occult Museum, and it is currently traveling as part of the Devils on the Run tour, with appearances scheduled at various paranormal conventions.
Seems safe.
I know. Horrible idea.
Yeah.
Horrible. So apparently in West Virginia, she was transferred to a new display case, and that's when people believe the real trouble started happening. And since her last stop in New Orleans, fires, jail escapes, and even damage to Marie Laveau's historic property has sparked fears that the supernatural abilities are stirring up all over again.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of those, relics, not artifacts, but, one of those items that is notorious. I think if you put it up against really anything else in popular culture history, I guess pop culture history, you're not going to find anything that is as talked about in terms of being cursed. Or you have a lot of people that are always on the fence, whether they believe or they don't believe. But there's, I think, a lot more people who generally don't believe that think, yeah, okay, there's something with this particular item, because as you mentioned, anywhere it goes, something happens.
Right. Exactly true. In fact, I have my own personal Annabelle story.
Okay. I don't know if you told me.
So I do a little side gig business with eBay. I sell rare collectibles, movie memorabilia, props, and I had an Annabelle doll from Spirit Halloween when Spirit Halloween was in their last days of closeout a few years ago. Right after Halloween, they do a 50% off sale on all their inventory. And I saw Annabelle, and I'm like, whoa, that looks pretty cool. I'll pick that up for my collection. So I picked it up. I held on to it for a while, and then I eventually sold her. And the buyer contacted me and said, hey, there's a problem, and gave me negative feedback without even me letting me respond to him, and said that he had received 2 palm trees in a box. Two
Like,
palm trees.
Were they
in a
real
box.
palm trees or plastic palm trees? Like, how are you going to put palm trees in a box?
Yeah. Well, they were miniature palm trees, apparently, but he never actually took pictures of the palm trees. He just took a picture of a box that, by the way, wasn't my box. It had my label on the box, but whenever I send out any eBay packages, I always put the eBay emblem sticker on there, and I put a customer service sticker on there. So neither of those stickers were even on there. And it wasn't the same box. So, of course, I wrote back to this guy and I said, hey, first of all, that's not my box that I sent you, and I'd like to open up an insurance claim and get you your money back. Well, he never responded. And that haunting negative feedback is like the worst thing an eBay seller can get.
Sure.
And it hurts the business and everything else. And this guy to this day has not responded back, and it's the curse.
It really is.
Curse of Annabelle.
Yeah, she got you. She got you good. And that's weird because he didn't get a refund. So it's, what were the motives behind this? Like, what was he doing?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's common on eBay where you replace an item, hey, I didn't actually get this, or there was something else in there. I just don't know what someone's motivation would be other than to give you a bad review for some reason. I don't know.
It's bizarre, to be honest with you, because there is kind of a unspoken code of ethics on eBay. Well, you just don't do that to somebody.
Yeah.
You know, you don't give a negative review unless you absolutely have to. And this guy just right off the bat gave me the negative review and then sent me the message. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. And it leads credence to the Annabelle curse, because I've been cursed.
But your life's improved since you've sold it because you don't have it anymore. And so
This is true.
silver lining.
Yeah. Well, hey, there is a silver lining to the story, actually,
Okay.
because he never responded. I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to send you your refund if you're not going to remove the negative feedback. So I got paid by the insurance company, and then I also was paid by the buyer. So I made
Twice
double,
as much. Yeah.
double
After the 46% that eBay takes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from that, we bring it inside a little bit. A painting, not Vigo, the Carpathian, but an actual painting, The Crying Boy. So I don't know if you've heard about this, but
I haven't.
okay. So if you see it, it's this older looking painting that it uses kind of a brown, beige, gold type mixture to it. So it's not a full spectrum of colors. There's only a few, but you look at this painting and it's literally a boy crying, but his eyes are really big and watery, and he's got this big pouty face, kind of like we would make when we're infants or 2 years old, where you kind of get that pouty lip and it starts to quiver and you cry. And that's kind of what this painting looks like, but it's very strange. It gives you a really strange feeling. It's almost like if you're even not an empath, you're taking on the feelings of that painting. You start to feel a little bit sad, I guess. So this was mass produced. It was cheap. It was common. It's not like a rare thing. It's not as common as the Starry Night or Mona Lisa, whatever, but it's one of the more well-known paintings. So this Crying Boy, it's created by Bruno Amadio. It's sold across the UK, thousands of homes, and then there was fires in these homes where the painting existed.
No kidding.
House fires started being reported as a total loss, everything gone, except the painting. So the painting would remain. Firefighters noticed it at first, same image, same result, over and over again. So Ron Hall, he's part of this South Yorkshire Fire Service, publicly warned people. So after a while, they said, hey, this painting, we don't know whether it to be true or not, but there seems to be some connection. Probably, just a coincidence like everything else we've talked about today. But for him, he mentioned he's seen too many cases to ignore it. Then the media got involved. So the Sun newspaper, so everyone knows the Sun, publishes the story. Suddenly panic spreads, and that's what they're good at. But still, it catches the attention of the public. People begin mailing their paintings back. They're sending them back. Thousands of them. Mass burnings are being organized. Entire piles of these paintings being destroyed at once. It's pretty remarkable.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And the legend doesn't stop because the story evolved. So some say the boy was real. His name was Don Bonillo. He was an orphan, survivor of a fire. Every place he went burned down. So
no kidding.
Kind of a problem child, it seems like. No, he's probably going from home to home. No one wants to keep him. Every place he went burned down. So no verified records can necessarily confirm this, but the story persists. And more importantly, so does the pattern of people, experiencing this. So if you ask yourself, if something survives fire repeatedly, if it shows up in the same way over and over and over again, at what point do you stop calling it coincidences, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So 4 stories, different places, different people, different circumstances, that same feeling, something repeating, something lingering, something not fully understood. Maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's probability, who knows? But these are some of the topics that we found interesting. They're easy to talk about. People are more familiar with. There's a couple maybe not as familiar. Maybe it's probability, maybe it's something that carries weight. And once they enter your life, it's like they don't leave easily. So I guess out of all of these, what would you say stands out the most? What's the most probable of some of the topics that we've covered?
Well, the crying boy is fascinating to me. I didn't know much about this one at all, to be honest with you. So that one really has piqued my interest, and I'd say I'd like to know more about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we would go look up some, research material, items that we know a little bit about, want to know some more. But this crying boy painting popped up over and over and over again for a cursed artifact. There was a couple other ones that were interesting, but this, like you, it stood out for me. I hadn't heard of it, and fires don't necessarily just start spontaneously. There's a reaction, right?
Right.
And unless you're really dealing with something like spontaneous combustion.
Right. I was thinking the exact same thing.
But for it to be repeated and the painting to be just fine seems a little more than coincidence. So I wanted to save the more interesting for last, at least from my perspective, and that's the Twilight Zone movie, because I really enjoy the TV shows, and I heard about this when I was really starting to dive into horror movies. I didn't know they had made a movie, but sometimes they'd show it on like USA or something like that. The Twilight Zone movie was certainly interesting. I thought it didn't do very well just because of what it was. It was an anthology, and maybe some of the people didn't find the stories as compelling, but I think it was a different reason, right?
Yep, absolutely. So there was a horrific, absolutely horrific death of 3 actors on the film. So it was Vic Morrow and the 2 children that he was carrying during the escape from the Vietnamese village. So it was illegal to work children after 8 o'clock at night. And the casting director said, this scene sounds kind of dangerous with explosions going off. There's a helicopter flying over them. And John Landis said, well, we'll get them off the street ourselves. So when they shot the test scene of the explosions going off around the helicopter, it actually rocked the helicopter really violently back and forth. And the people in the helicopter said, wow, that kind of seemed kind of rough. And then John Landis reportedly said back, you think that was big? You ain't seen nothing yet.
Well, that's how you know it's not going to end well. That's not good.
No. So in this scene where Vic Morrow is rescuing the two children from the village, they actually used real bullets when Vic Morrow's character is asking for help from the soldiers, and John Landis insisted on doing that.
I don't know the reasoning behind that. I don't know if that's a common thing in movies. I always thought they use special effects or blanks or something like that. I know, just from what other people have said, other actors on interviews, that John Landis is kind of more old school. He wants more realism. That's the type of director he tends to be.
Right. Yeah, and you're right, because they don't use real bullets on sets anymore, and that was for the realism factor. But you have to draw a line between, in my opinion, what's going to be realistic and what's just downright dangerous to your cast and crew, right?
It's certainly a far jump from Animal House to Twilight Zone.
Exactly. Yeah. So going back to that scene, so the explosions were too close to the helicopter. Ultimately, it damaged it. It brought it down into the river, killing Vic Morrow and the two children while their parents were standing there watching all of it happen. So, this is a hard one to talk about, to be honest. I mean, what do you think about John Landis after, watching and hearing about this horrible incident?
Well, I know he was shaken, and this is through, interviews and other people saying it, and even his own words after. It was obviously a moment that nobody wants. It's absolutely terrible. I mean, it's a tragedy. But I did see him at, it was actually Vic Morrow's funeral. So he made it a point, he being John Landis, made it a point to go to all the funerals of the three deceased. He went to, of course, Vic Morrow's and gave a speech. And I don't know that everyone there was 100%, I don't want to say on board, but I think there was some blame to be thrown around, of course. But he said something as a eulogy to the effect of, well, while Vic Morrow isn't here with us, his work goes on for eternity, something like that. And kind of was tearful and quick and walked away after. So I'm sure there's a lot of remorse. Terrible situation.
Well, ultimately, he was not convicted. He was found not guilty of involuntary manslaughter, because that's what the charges were that he was brought up on. And, what I find really interesting is Spielberg wasn't on set that night, because had he been involved, he would have been drug into that courtroom.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah. They filmed all three, all three. What do you call them?
Segments.
Thank you. Sure. They filmed all three segments separately. There's three different directors. So, yeah, he wasn't there, but I don't remember much about Jaws being such an issue as far as poor work standards, things like that. It was demanding out of the actors, but it wasn't physically so. It wasn't putting them necessarily in harm's way. surprising to an extent that he was quote unquote not convicted after your test run was terrible, and it should tell you maybe we should go to plan B. Instead, they didn't. This happened.
Well, I know the special effects coordinator, it ruined his career.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's very sad because if you go back and watch the Twilight Zone, in that scene, I mean, the set design was brilliant.
Yeah.
It looked like Vietnam.
So some of our personal favorites we get to talk about. For me, it's the Omen in Poltergeist. Wizard of Oz for you hits home and holds a special place for you, of course. Anything that we've talked about, any questions, comments, any concerns? I mean, there seems to be quite a bit out there, and this is just, we've only done a few of these, but there's hundreds of incidences that we could have talked about.
Right, absolutely. There's so many out there. It was hard to put this episode together because you're right, there are so many of them.
Yeah. Well, again, we appreciate everybody tuning in.
Well,
and with that said,
it's almost midnight.
It's almost midnight. That means it's time for us to go. The world gets a little stranger after midnight. Till next time.